Good to see everybody here. A lot of familiar faces. How about, do you guys want to stand up for 1 second? Just to stretch out for a minute. Okay, yeah, here's some yes. And what you do, so I love that we started off with dinosaurs today. Okay, so I'm going to bring us up to humans. When we think about humans, what do humans need? 3 things. Food, water, shelter. Okay, excellent. All right. What does a good AI model need? Data, GPUs, and a sales team that's going to tell everyone that it's going to work perfect and never fail. Thought this crowd would appreciate that one. All right. My name is Eric Whedon. As Brian said, I lead sales at TrueLark. And I've, over the past 6.5 years, believe it or not, have been helping DSOs really rethink and engage, rethink how they're using patient engagement AI. We had a discussion earlier in here about kind of the adoption curve. And just from my perspective, 6.5 years in AI seems like, I don't know, what is that, 60 years, I think. It's kind of like dog years. Back in 2021, the Smilist, Phil Toe, was the early innovator that adopted TrueLark AI at his DSO. And I think Ron, who has been called on many times in this room, might have skipped out, but I believe I started working with Ron back in 2023. So I still think we are kind of in that early phase. But back in the early days, when I asked somebody what their AI strategy was, it was kind of like glazed eyes, right? Now when I ask people about what their AI strategy is, they seem to have some semblance of it. And it's less of what the heck is AI to, okay, now we know we need to use it. It's just a matter of what are we going to use and what is the best way to use it. A little bit about TrueLark. We build AI-driven control center for patient communications that really, as Brian said, fills schedules, drives profitability and streamlines operations. We integrate directly into the systems that you use today. So, for example, we have a direct integration into Denicon and Curve. We're working with Overjet and many others out there, and of course, have integrations into a lot of the usual suspects when it comes to practice management systems. The title of today's session is 3 ways the front office can drive profitability, and we'll cover that. But also, I want to frame it in a bigger picture because if you don't have the right lens, you're going to miss the real value. So let's get into it here. Got a Venn diagram. I like that Soda Cloud uses a Venn diagram. A big fan of those. So, just like I said, humans need food, water, and shelter. A profitable or successful, thriving DSO should get 3 things right, with AI communications. AI communications should be driving patient satisfaction. We heard that from Ron earlier. We've heard a lot about it should be driving a focused staff. And what do we mean by that? We talked a lot about, taking off the transactional activities and allowing them to focus on higher value activities. 4 or 5 years ago, it was all about, hey, we're trying to get to the phone as much as possible. We know things are falling through the cracks. We're going to use you as a backstop. Now people are rethinking that, of not only maybe using it as a backstop, even front-loading AI and having, again, escalations to humans when needed. And I'll talk more about that and how it's important to have a platform that is capable of doing such things. But when you align all 3 of these, this is really where you get the value, right? And so satisfied patients, that is giving them what they want, when they want it, and how they want it. We talked about 24/7 AI. Would somebody really be scheduling in the middle of the night? Actually, yes, believe it or not, I've seen it happen. Oftentimes, they might be an emergency appointment that they're trying to schedule, but sure enough, they'll do that. Also, people that are, looking at their calendar for the week, it's a Sunday night, it's late, they have an appointment on the books, and they call a practice that's closed to reschedule it, right? And so there are these instances where AI comes and is very valuable in places that you might not traditionally think of. And again, focused staff, we talked about this. not being stuck doing those routine tasks, right? We've had a couple of people up here talking about that. And then, operational excellence within the DSO. We talked about just kind of the climate here where, money's not free. You can't just go out and, buy practices and buy, margin and revenue. You really have to optimize and be efficient. There's not, I talked to a DSO recently and I said, well, yeah, there's not much that we can do with the doctors, the hygienists. Really, we're looking to optimize the front desk. That's really where we see an opportunity. There's a lot of, people in here that are CIOs that, we're all kind of shooting the breeze last night about guys that were programming in Perl and PostgreSQL and things back in the old days. And you kind of have this notion of the 10x engineer. And so maybe that concept's kind of familiar to you guys. So we have a notion of the 10x front office worker at the DSO. But there's a catch. If this was all easy, every DSO would already be there, right? So what I want to do is take a look at some of the barriers to this, holy grail of realizing value through AI. So good here. So from our work with literally hundreds of practices, 4 barriers consistently get in the way. The first one is lack of standardization. I had discussions last night, on the patio about this alone. Every practice has its own best practices, making it nearly impossible to scale. A lot of times, you may have a business model that allows for autonomy at the practice level. So how many here have complete standardization of their tech stack? Okay. How many here had, no one rose their hand, okay. How many here have, I would say, 2, 3, 4, 5 PMSs within a DSO, right? Yeah, quite a few hands out there, right? So, lack of standardization is a reality. The next thing is process inconsistencies. Process is lacking even within one group. Workflows vary, recalls, reminders, schedulings. You go from one practice to another, and they're like a snowflake. They do things differently. The next thing is disconnected data sources. We've talked about PMS phones being in silos, creating blind spots and manual work. The last thing that you want to do is one, have swivel chair manual work that really infuses human error, or it creates latency in getting things done. We talked a lot about how hard it is to get treatment plan conversion data, so that's a real barrier. And then lastly, but not least, the technology being inadequate. And again, this kind of gets back to systems that maybe have a level of automation that create, what I would call task awareness, but not task completion. So again, you're having to burn human capital in transactional areas that otherwise you shouldn't, and get away from the swivel chair fulfillment. So these barriers explain why AI can feel like magic in one setting and chaos in another. The difference comes down to the foundation. So let's take a look at what that foundation looks like. So we have value at the top. That's what we want. We want to drive value for the DSO. And really, what I want you to think about when you're evaluating an AI platform, whether it's a AI communication control center like TrueLark or other AI platforms out there, is really ask, is it configurable? We like to say TrueLark is 1,000 configurations in a box. Because we know all those barriers are going to exist. We know that you're going to have all these different systems. We know the data is not going to be perfect. And so from a configurability standpoint, you want a system that's going to adapt to the unique needs and workflows instead of forcing you into a one-size-fits-all model. I was at a show recently where a guy got up and he said, hey, if we just had standardization, great data, my AI platform would work wonderful. And I'm like, man, that's not going to happen. You need to think about it the other way. You need to think about, your AI platform having the adaptability, the configurability to address, these inconsistencies and these gaps out there. So definitely a very important foundational element of a good AI platform. The next thing too is comprehensive. So when we think about comprehensive, it's not just a point solution. You want a platform that's, for example, going to support voice, text, chat, and integrate into all these systems that you already use. And then, of course, we talked about automation. Automation is really, the completion of tasks, right? So in our case, we do a lot of scheduling. So we want to, talk about taking that conversation with the patient from A to Z, right? Without human intervention to book, reschedule, and prevent duplicates rather than handing it back to staff, because what's the point of that? And then I alluded to this earlier, extensibility. So it grows with your locations, it grows with your use cases, it's future-proof, it has an architecture that allows for that. So when you have all four of these elements, you really start to get the foundation that AI truly can create value. And here's how that, in my next slide, I'm going to show how that plays in the patient journey. And I think I thought I saw maybe like a minute. Okay, good, all right. Keeping me on track, just about there, Michelle. Okay, so I think one of the words of the day is multimodal. We have Venn diagrams and multimodal today, which I love. So the multimodal patient journey, the patient journey today is multimodal. And that means that patients want to engage by phone, by text, by chat, and they're often switching between these channels in the same interaction. So the key isn't stitching together point solutions. The best platforms are going to infuse voice, text, and chat together in a control center that has an experience that feels seamless to the patient. So again, that patient satisfaction isn't creating friction, it's reducing friction, and make it very easily manageable by staff, right? Because you need staff adoption. We talked a lot about that. If they don't like it, they're going to shoot it down before it ever even gets a fair start. One little thing before I kind of wrap up here, I'm going to make a comment about voice. Voice definitely is the new shiny penny, the thing that everyone's excited about, TrueLark as well. And it definitely matters. It's a natural for certain use cases, inbound, in other critical situations like when you're on the go. But here's the truth. Voice is the shiny penny. SMS is the workhorse. SMS is cheaper. It has a higher read rate, and it captures details more accurately, and it makes easy to share things like forms, manage pre-approval for financing, and even create new patient profiles. So our approach, not to say that voice is bad or any other channel out there, though, is to say that it should be a layer on top of SMS. So with chat being the flexible bridge between the two. So just something to think about when you are looking at platforms that might look and smell like TrueLark. Together, all these maximize engagement and accuracy and minimize cost. And so with that, I will say thank you to all of you. At TrueLark, we believe we're building something special. If you're interested, come by, talk to me. We talked a lot about pilots. We definitely have a very innovative pilot program, and if you're interested, love to share more.
Thanks, Eric.
Yep.